So what are web components? I'm curious who of you have heard about that term. And probably every one of you uses web components at least in some way or fashion. The concept of web components actually has been around for a long time. There's this guy called Alex Russell who has introduced one of the first concepts and ideas early in 2011. And actually not much later, Google released a framework called Polymer, which brought the first components of web components and reusable UI components to the web. At that time, like back in the days, JavaScript applications were mostly massive monolith, often using a model view controller pattern written in frameworks such as Backbone or Marionette.js. And people became very frustrated to maintain this kind of application because they would go fast and become very complex. So with frameworks like React.js, Polymer, or Angular early on, a new era of front-end development really has kicked off that try to encapsulate UI bits into reusable components that can encapsulate styles and functionality to be used across your application. So when we talk about components and reusable UI components, we kind of have to differentiate two things here. The one thing is the idea of reusable UI components, which has been implemented early on by React before even the standard has been landed in browsers. And then we have the web technology called web components, which is the actual standard. So there's basically the same idea, but two kind of different things. And I will explain that in a second. Today, it's very awesome to see so many UI components popping up left and right that allow you to write reusable web components. We have frameworks like lit.html, stencil.js, React, Vue, and Svelte that all allow you to do those kind of things. At a very basic level, web components are a few specifications and APIs that are part of the HTML specification and that allow you to write custom elements and components. The main technologies in itself are custom element specification. You see on the left, we create a custom HTML element where we have a class in JavaScript that extends from the HTML element. And we attach or we register that custom element to a registry to be able to use it in our application. Another concept of web components is the shadow DOM, which is a smaller, more self-contained scoped DOM that allows you to encapsulate CSS and markup into components. And lastly, there's the idea of HTML templates that allows you to define HTML and inject it into a page using JavaScript. So those HTML fragments basically are not immediately rendered when the document is loaded. It can be rendered and attached to the DOM, for instance, the shadow DOM, using JavaScript. And as you can see, a very basic web component does not need any framework or build tool or bundler. There's just the basic JavaScript and web APIs that allow you to write really nice reusable web components. But if you have used frameworks like React, obviously, you probably never have written a web component like this. Here in this example, lit.html kind of like is a framework, a small superset on the actual web APIs that makes it a little bit more easier to write those web components. There are other similar examples that provide you a really small superset, for instance, the Enhance framework or stencil.js. And these are very useful if you really want to build a set of UI components that you want to use across your organization. And no matter if you use React or Vue, Next.js, or whatever is out there, those are at the end basic web components that you can inject in your framework no matter what it is. So these really, UI frameworks in a sense really make it very easy to write shareable UI components. But there's also React and the more mature frameworks like Vue and Svelte that has been allowing to write reusable UI components much longer, even before the standard has landed in the browser. And they kind of achieved this in a different way by using JavaScript and things like a virtual DOM to make modification to the DOM in the most effective way. And things like style encapsulation has been achieved through different techniques. Now, I think the majority of the folks here, have been using web components, already testing it, and we see that when we test those components or our application in general, we need to ask ourselves, what we are actually testing. Does our feature that we are testing actually modifies the whole application state or requires a specific third-party service like an authentication service? Over the years, we have established so many ways we can test our application to ensure we do that in an efficient manner. And we have created best practices around that. But as technologies, changes, we as communities should also go back and think about, should we test our application different now with these new technologies that have been coming up?